Good evening, and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we are in our 28th year, I talk to writers about their craft, what they're working on, what they've accomplished, what they might be planning for the future. Sometimes we cast a wider net, however. We have had on musicians, actors, sculptors, all sorts of different brands of artists. So if you have an idea for a guest who might be a good artist for the Writer's Block, writer or other brand, please watch for our address at the end of the show. We'd be glad to get your suggestions. I also want to point out that the Writer's Block and all the other original programming that comes out of Cape Ann TV for and about Cape Ann is a result of cable access television. This is a wonderful community asset that you don't get if you subscribe to Dish. It's only cable, so don't be sucked in by those Dish ads. You stick with us, stick with cable, stick with Cape Ann TV. Tonight, I'm very happy to say we do have two writers who are visiting again with another exciting, interesting visual book about history on Cape Ann. They are John and Betty Erkkila, and I'm going to read the paragraph at the close of their latest book, which explains their background. John and Betty Erkkila, husband and wife, collaborated to fashion and share a visual chronicle of fabulous Lanesville with over 300 antique photographs, ephemera, postcards, and newspaper accounts. Longtime Pigeon Cove residents and history aficionados, the Erkkilas have pursued eclectic careers, pastimes, and travel. They invite you to help conserve the remarkable history of Lanesville's colorful, vibrant past by sharing your own cherished recollections and precious mementos. John and Betty Erkkila, welcome back to the Writer's Block.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You did previously a book on Pigeon Cove.
Yes.
And a book on Rockport.
Betty did her story on her growing up in Pigeon Cove.
Growing up in Pigeon, my little chickadee,
Yes.
growing up in Pigeon Cove,
right?
And we can show that a wonderful picture of yourself there, my little chickadee. But with Souvenirs of Lanesville, you are venturing outside the Rockport limits. Although your backgrounds, if you can share them again, that you were talking about before
Yes.
we went on the air, are
Lanesville is my home.
you were born in Lanesville.
Yes, I raised in Lanesville.
Raised in Lanesville.
Yes.
And you have a Lanesville connection.
My mother was born in Lanesville in 1913, and some of her siblings were as well. And John and I did have a house in Lanesville during the 1970s, so we do have some
You're well
connections
connected
to
there.
So
Lanesville.
you're well connected. It does seem like strange territory when you go over the Gloucester line.
Yeah. It's a mile and a half long from the beach to the Folly Cove line, so it's not a big area.
Mile and a half,
Yes.
Lanesville is.
From
As
Holcomb Beach.
you were mentioning before the show, John, I think that it seems like foreign territory to some people who live in Magnolia corner of Gloucester to Lanesville.
Yeah.
It's quite a trek.
Don't know where it is. They don't know.
I can't find it without GPS.
Yes.
Tell me when you got the idea for Souvenirs of Lanesville.
Well, we realize that our time on Earth is finite, and we thought it would be lovely if we could leave a legacy of something for people that come after us. My father had been born in Pigeon Cove, so I got John to collaborate with me on the Souvenirs of Pigeon Cove book, and we had a lot of people loan pictures to us. We had a lot from our own collections, so that worked out pretty well. We had something like 250 photos altogether. And then we thought, because we have the Lanesville connection as well, that we would put together something similar, kind of patterned after the Pigeon Cove, Souvenirs of Pigeon Cove. So we called it Souvenirs of Lanesville, and again, we sent out letters to individuals who possibly may have photos, and they would be willing to share some with us, and they would get recognition in the book as well. So we did that, and that worked out pretty well. We ended up with something like 308 photos, and then we had a lot from our own collections as well.
Tell me,
So-
I'm going to page through just a few
Sure.
pages to give people an idea of what it looks like. We're going to talk about some pictures in detail later, but you can see that on every page there are 1 or 2 or 3 photographs with cut line explanation and often a longer paragraph explaining when it was taken, who is in it, what automobiles often are shown, and what stores, what highways. It's really fascinating. I've spent a lot of time in Lanesville over the years, and I enjoyed it very much, even though I was not raised in Lanesville, but it became interesting to me. Was it, tell me, John or Betty, is it more difficult to get the photographs, or is it more difficult to track down who is in them? And
No, to get the
Wh-
photographs, that was the difficult, not so difficult, but to get people to send us something that we needed for that time period. And we did research at the library for some of the pictures and information in the museum.
in Gloucester
Yes.
and Rockport? Does Rockport have some of that material too?
No, not so much.
No.
For the other book they did, but not
Yeah.
this one. And also the library. We did a lot of looking at the library.
In the City Hall archives.
Yes, City Hall
We went there.
archives,
We
yes.
actually went to cemeteries again, too, to get precise dates
right.
on birth and death dates of some people that we were interested in knowing a little bit more about as
I've
well.
often used a website called Find a Grave. And
Really?
there are hundreds of thousands of photographs of graves
Oh, that's
all
a
over the country. It's very
good
interesting
idea for future
resource.
reference
There's
sometime.
so much on the computer, it's amazing.
Did you find the times when somebody would give you a picture and you knew, say, of 5 people, and you know the person here,
Oh,
but
yeah.
the middle person, no one knows.
Yeah.
Is that Uncle Fred or Aunt or
Yeah.
Uncle Jack or some mysterious person? And then, do you have to throw that picture out because you don't identify everybody?
Not so much. If everybody else is interesting or known to the area, we probably would have left it in and would have said the other person's unknown at this time.
And then
We're
sometimes
hoping that
it's,
somebody would call us and let us know who it is when the book came out.
sometimes it's fun for people to speculate, too, to give them something to talk about, a basis of a little conversation.
Yes.
So that happens sometimes, too.
It's amazing when the picture was taken, everybody knew who that person was. And he was having a full, or she was having a full life and walked off and laughed, and now no one has any
Well-
idea who that is.
One of the pictures in there, there's 3 servicemen. It was taken in 1944, standing on the street, and nobody knows who they are. But we had to have it
That's
in
one
there.
of the pictures we were going to zoom in
Ah,
on.
yes.
So why don't we talk about that while we're talking about these 7 specific pictures we're going to zoom in on.
Mm-hmm.
We can start with the 3 military boys. Tell us about that picture. This is picture designated in your files 278, 3 military boys. Now, what's in that picture?
There's 3 of them, 2 Army guys and a Navy guy. They're standing right on the Washington Street, right in the middle of Lanesville. And the street was probably not paved at that time even. But we got it from a negative in an envelope marked 1944. So,
toward the end of the war.
yes. But no one has identified those guys. Maybe they're just passing through. We don't
3
really know.
mystery guys.
Yes.
So we're hoping by perhaps showing the picture tonight, maybe somebody
Yeah.
will come forth and they'll say
Yeah, I
that's
hope so, yeah. That'd
my
be-
great uncle or what have you.
Surely one of them
So-
has to be based around here.
You would think
Maybe
so.
a couple buddies.
I think so. But the photograph was probably taken by one of the local photographers who was quite professional. He took many of the photos that we have in our book, actually.
And you labeled that as 3 military boys.
Yes.
Let's keep going and talk about some other pictures. That we can't do all 300.
No.
No,
But we're going to do another designated in your files as 032. That's for Jim Capillo, the editor and director. 032 is called Boy with a Goat Cart.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. that's-
There can't have been many goat carts around.
No, that was just such a cute picture. We had to have that in there. We don't know who the boy was, but he had 2 goats trained to pull that cart. I never knew goats could do anything.
Talk about,
No, they're kind of like cats, aren't
Yeah.
they? It's kind of
I guess so.
if you do something they don't like, they'll butt you.
I would think so, yeah. That's right downtown Lanesville, and in the background is the Silas Dion's barber shop. that he was a local barber who.
Now, do you remember who was the source of that photograph or how you got that?
Yes, that was a local family who was a real professional type photographer. The Foster brothers it came from.
But they weren't able to help on the identification.
They were long
either.
gone. Their picture was taken such a long time ago.
Yeah. 40s again?
No, this is probably in the early 1900s.
It is a cart, right? It's not a car.
Talk about a unique mode of transportation.
Yes.
That really,
Yeah.
we got a kick out of that
Wouldn't
one.
be able to go downtown Gloucester with
There's
it.
Probably
another photo with somebody being pulled by some oxen too, but we're not seeing that
We
tonight.
don't
but-
have that
No,
on
we don't
file,
have that
no.
tonight.
Another one, now this is a familiar name because I had a guest, Wayno Ray, years ago.
Oh,
Your file number is 053, and it's Wayno Hall.
Wainola Hall.
Tell us what Wayno Hall is in this black and white photo.
Well, it's a great postcard that was taken years ago by one of the Foster brothers.
Once
And-
again,
Again, the
Yes,
Foster brothers.
Yes, and it really is a lovely picture. Wainola Hall was the centerpiece of the Finnish community, actually, and they had all sorts of exciting events there, nuptials, coffee socials, dances, silent movies with Valentino, Clara Bow.
There's a nice photo of a couple in here that are going to be married, I think, a year later.
My aunt and uncle,
Wayno
as a
Hall.
matter of fact. And then under the umbrella of Wainola Hall, there was also the Lanesville Athletic Club. So a lot of people from Lanesville, even people who were not of Finnish descent, were involved there, from very young people to older people. And then also under the umbrella was the Waino Band. A lot of well-known musicians were in that band and went on and had very exciting
It's
careers.
a happening place.
A lot going on.
yes. However,
Oh,
unfortunately, it caught fire from a grass fire nearby and burned in 1945.
not 1945.
1945.
Yes.
From a grass fire.
Yes, it got away from the person, a neighbor or something, and it caught the building.
Wow.
And I was there. I saw the fire. My mother took me down to see it at the time. But I didn't do it.
A wooden structure that was
Yes.
probably
Very
just
dry.
as dry as a bone.
Very
went
old.
up like that.
Yes.
And it was just very sad because the hall contained a lot of music having to do with the Waino Hall. The Finns had a great library there, and
Very sad.
Lots
the
of
records,
lost,
the
yes.
records, and a lot of the members at that point were rather elderly, and they just couldn't envision starting up another, hall,
Yeah.
another club like that.
Yes.
So that was the end of it. It just kind of faded away, which was too bad.
It was.
Yeah. And TV was going to come and steal everybody's
Yeah.
party time anyway. Now, another picture in your file 097. 097 is a 1955 Ford. We're moving forward here.
That's my thing. Cars are my thing. So I'll say that's a 1955 Ford Skyliner convertible that was mistakenly driven onto Plum Cove Beach. About once a year, someone from out of town thought they could drive on Plum Cove Beach, like the Cape was down Florida. But the Plum Cove Beach sand is very soft and you sink right in. So everybody had to get towed out of there.
Really, does that happen often?
Yes, but once in the summertime, usually once or twice a year.
Still?
I think it happened
Yeah,
last summer.
I think it happened recently. Yeah,
Yeah, the 55 Ford is having a tough time.
yeah. He had to dig him out, put boards and all kinds of things. But eventually, they get out of there.
Oh, that's interesting. People drive on Magnolia Beach all the time.
Do they?
Low tide, yeah.
They're not.
If the seaweed's out.
The Plum Cove sand is very soft, so you sink right
So
in.
the 55 Ford.
Mm.
I remember I wouldn't have been able to conjure a 55 Ford, but I do remember the picture. File picture 176, also featured in your book. 176 is Bernard Hauling streetcar.
Oh yes, the streetcars were in service around Cape Ann for about 25 years. But in 1920, everything stopped, and the cars were out of business. This particular photo shows the Bernard Company from Pigeon Cove hauling one of the streetcars away. It probably was left on the tracks down in Lanesville. But you can see right on the streetcar, it says Lanesville right on the side of it. But they
So you're
haul,
hauling it away as junk.
yeah. It's a sad thing.
I think the automobile industry had its hand in that.
The buses.
Hmm?
The buses came in.
Buses, yeah.
Motorized buses. And they kind of were more efficient than the trolleys, which occasionally broke down or got off the tracks.
So that was taken early in the century then, before, you said they disappeared in 1920.
That was 1920.
That was 20.
Yes, because that's when they went out.
Now, moving on, we're going to talk about a couple more pictures to zero in out of the 300 wonderful pictures included here. This is in your files, picture 183, and it is the Fitzgibbon Quarry. Now, how did an Irish name like Fitzgibbon sneak into the quarry list?
Well, Fitzgibbon was one of the different owners of the quarry over the years. It was named a couple other names like Bay State Quarry. Bianchini's Quarry was the last name. And the other name was what?
Those are the only three that I
Oh, okay,
remember.
that's right.
actually.
All of a sudden, there's only three names. Yes,
Three names?
yes. But that photo, I like that photo because it shows the pure granite that could be sliced out of the quarry. There's no seams in it. They cut it out of there, and it's just perfect granite. One of the many quarries in Lanesville.
Yeah. All
And-
swimming holes now.
Yes, private.
And many had a lot of different ladders in them to show the depth of the quarries as
Yeah.
well. And as John says, long hours and short pay, really.
Yeah, long
They were
hours
very
and short
difficult,
pay.
Yeah,
very
that was
difficult.
And dangerous.
Very
Yeah,
dangerous
very
job.
dangerous. And
And they had to keep constantly pumping
mhm.
to keep them dry.
That's right. Yeah, they just didn't have safety things like they do today. Dangerous work.
We're going to zero in on one more picture from Souvenirs of Lanesville. This is in your file 188, and it is the Cachopolis Fruit Wagon.
Ah, yes.
What year is that from?
What year would you say that
Early
is? It's
1900s, we think.
early, the roads were still gravel, and it's a very artistic-looking wagon. And James Cachopoulos came over. We think he probably went all around Cape Ann peddling his fruit and his vegetables.
He had a
And-
big store in Rockport.
and a handsome-looking horse.
He had a store in Rockport.
Yes.
So
Cachopolis Market.
would his fruit and vegetables come up by train from Boston?
Don't really know. I wouldn't doubt it. Because this is
Did-
before automobiles. There were no. This again is the early part of the century. There probably weren't any cars or trucks on the road.
So a fruit wagon.
It really is just a beautiful wagon, just so artistic.
Yes.
The
Notice
work
the
on it.
artwork on there,
you'll
yes.
see.
With the hand painting.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. Some very talented person, I guess, created that work. And then in the background of the picture is a house where one of the longtime Lane School teachers lived. Viola Bass lived in that particular house that's shown in the same photo.
We can't zero in on all the pictures here because
Sure.
there are 300, but I did want to zero in on some that you provided the station with electronic copies so we can insert them into the show. And then I want to switch now to a couple technical questions. When did you start writing Souvenirs of Lanesville, and how long did the research and the compiling take altogether?
Probably about 1 year, I would say. And it was a lot of work. It certainly was. You should have seen our living room flooded with all kinds of books and materials. And so it probably took, I would say, about 1 year, calling up people, talking to people, writing letters, email, visiting people, that type of thing.
Scanning photos and processing
Right.
photos.
You
Yeah.
scan your own at home?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had some great negatives to work from. Some of it so clear, like that cover photo.
So you must become very technically adept with with internet and
Somewhat.
photography.
And some
Not-
people sent photos via email, too. Some people
Yes.
gave us, a lot of photos. We couldn't even always use all of the ones that they gave us and we loved all the photos, so it was hard to, believe it or not, narrow down to 308 pictures even. We really had several more than that, but we just thought you can't
Well,
have
I
a
bet
book.
that's going to be twice as big.
Yeah, yeah.
Twice as expensive.
So it took you a year, and then...
Probably 1 year.
What about
Yeah.
the publishing process?
Well, we had the same publisher. We've had the same publisher with these 3 books, and so that worked out very well. And I would say maybe the Souvenirs of Lanesville book perhaps was a little bit easier because we could pattern it after the Souvenirs of Pigeon Cove book.
Yes.
So we had gone through that whole process and made it perhaps somewhat easier for us.
Now, is the process easier for you because you've become and are becoming kind of an important local historian? You mentioned in the intro that I used that the paragraph of description that I used that you really want to preserve local lore and
Yes,
memories,
that's right.
and people recognize that. Now, did people say jump it? You say, oh, please use these, please use these.
Somewhat, and unfortunately, a lot of them did afterwards, after the book came out. Say, oh, I wish I had called you. I had some. But right now, we're going to not do another book for some time that we know of.
People were very generous to
Yes.
us. They really were. It was great. And then, as I say, it was heartbreaking to have to pare it down to 308 photos because there were some other great ones, too.
Were some people's feelings hurt a little bit that
No, I don't think
they
so.
didn't use all their photos?
No, we explained to them. I said, we'll try to, if we can fit it in.
One lady called and she described some photos that she had that sounded absolutely delightful. And I said, well, gee, the only problem, Mary, is, the photos are of Bayview, and she really wanted them to be in the book. I said, well, I'm really sorry, but this is just Lanesville, so Bayview would have to be another time, I guess, so that was the end of it.
So you said you're not going to do another book for a while?
Well, we don't know that we're going to do another one. This is so much work.
Is Bayview on the horizon?
No, I don't think so, but we're
don't
just
think so.
taking an interlude, and
Yes.
because, within 7 years, I think 3 books have come out, and that's quite a bit of work, really.
And I know
So-
my mother only did 2 books in her lifetime, so we made her.
She was on the show. I
Was she?
believe.
I don't think so.
Was she?
No, Barbara Erkkila. No, we tried to get her to come on here, but she wasn't really.
I remember your mom very well.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought she was on. Of course, my memory's not the greatest anymore. Anyway, I mentioned Wayne O'Ray.
Yes.
Did you know him?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
He was on the show. It had to be because I know he died a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, something like that.
We used his book for some of our research, and he was a friend of my mother was one of the Jacobsons in Lanesville. There were probably 3 different Jacobson families, but so Wayno was a good friend of the Jacobson family, and one uncle especially.
That's an old Finnish name, Wayno, is that right?
Wayno is, yes.
Wayno, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I recognize Wayno Hall right away. I recognize the
Right.
name.
And a lot of the Finns, when they came over, the names were too complicated for the English-speaking people, so they shortened them. So that's what Ray was.
Well, it was, I think, Rajaniemi.
Yeah, Rajaniemi, yeah.
Was that it?
Yes.
And then even the Jacobson name of my mother's family, they had a different one that was really too complicated, I guess, for a lot of the quarry bosses. So very often you were assigned the name of perhaps where you boarded, the name of the owner of the house where you boarded, or maybe someone just arbitrarily flung out a name
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
records or what have you.
On Ellis Island,
So,
they just give you the
yes.
name,
Yeah.
Your name is the only place I've seen in English type where there's 2 Ks next to each other.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of that in the Finnish language.
Yeah, double consonant like that.
Yeah. Then there are other Erkkilas around, too, not on Cape Ann, but
Yeah.
I have cousins up in Michigan and still in Finland.
There's another Betty and John Erkkila, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
in Michigan. They came on several years ago for a family reunion.
Really?
So
Are they second cousins or third
Yeah.
cousins or
Mhm.
something like that?
Yep.
I want to ask, because I know there are people out there, because I've talked to them, who want to write books. They have an idea, well, maybe I'll do something about the I don't know, I remember talking to somebody once about doing a history of the shoe factory of Beverly,
Yeah, sure.
because they have relatives that work down there. What if somebody wants to do a little local history, and because you're experts at it,
I don't know about that.
what kind of steps should they take, first, second, third, to get started on a project like that?
Well, what we did was we created a one-size-fits-all letter to send to a number of people who we thought could have some photographs, because the most unlikely person could have photographs. You just don't know who has them, and you can't send a letter out to 1,000 people. So we did send out quite a few of those one-size-fits-all letters, and then we put a target date when we were hoping to have them by. And so that worked out pretty well.
And I'll bet everybody responded right on time.
Well, what happened with the Pigeon Cove book, Souvenirs of Pigeon Cove book, we did not have a date on it, so that was not a good idea. And we learned from that book you need to give people something to focus on. So that worked out
I think
pretty
we tried
well.
to gather most of our information, get it all down first before we moved ahead.
Information on the photographs.
Yes.
So the first thing is to get the research in place.
Yes.
And decide first if you want a photograph book or, excuse me, a history with a few photographs.
Mhm.
Was that a big decision initially? Whether you're going to have, write a history of Pigeon Cove with 15 pictures?
No, we had, it was made to be, we knew we had a lot of photos that we could work from, so we decided it would be photos for sure.
And then what we did, I haven't really seen it in another book, but as you probably noticed, as part of the preface, it's kind of like a little mini memoir. I got John to tell about his years of growing up in the 40s and 50s, and it doesn't focus just on him. It tells about other people that he interrelated with, and so I thought maybe that might be
Source right in the house.
Yes.
so that might be a little bit, hopefully, interesting to people.
Where in Lanesville did you live, John?
The
when you were
very
a boy?
end of High Street,
High Street?
Mhm.
I know High Street.
way up in the woods. It's 1 mile in from Washington Street. Half of it was dirt road.
I
Still
know that's where the cultural center's out there on the end of High Street, isn't it?
It's part way up is the Lanesville Community Center.
Community Center, yes.
That's about halfway up.
I know somebody on High Street, Claudia Schweitzer lives on
Oh.
High Street, and
Mhm.
some other people. And where did you live when you had a house in Lanesville?
We had an antique house that dated back to about 1900 or so. It was on Langsford Street. And so we had a lot of fun with that, renovating the whole house. It needed really everything. It had good bones, as they say, but needed a new roof. And John did the exterior painting, scraping, and painting of the house. And I did a lot of the interior painting. And
Is this Langsford down toward Lanesville Center or out towards Rockport?
Halfway. About halfway on Langsford Street. It ran between where Washington Street branched off
Yeah.
till they met
Langsford
again.
is the right turn. Washington veers left and Langsford goes right, and then they join about a mile and a half
Exactly.
again.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun, that project too. And then I enlisted my mother, and I don't do wallpapering, so I got my mother and sister to do the wallpapering in the dining room, and so that was fun.
This went very fast for me. I noticed we're out of time.
Oh, my
and,
goodness.
I'm going to have to wrap it up. I enjoyed this talk, John and Betty Erkkila, about Souvenirs of Lanesville. I'm going to hold it up again. It's available at local bookstores and on Amazon.
No,
no.
Cape Ann Museum
Cape Ann Museum
and
The
Gloucester Bookstore and
Gloucester Bookstore.
also through us.
and through you,
Yes.
the Erkkilas
We may add another
of Rockport.
another bookstore possibly, or place. We're not certain. We're kind of thinking about that right now.
Let me know.
All right.
Thank you for coming down.
Okay.
Our
Thank you for
pleasure.
sharing Souvenirs of Lanesville.
Great.
I want to thank our TV audience as well. If you've learned something about Lanesville and how our local historians, John and Betty Erkkila, described it in their wonderful new book, Souvenirs of Lanesville, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.